Hello, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. I'm Helena. This month, I have been exploring all the ways that I can make the most of my Hobonichi planners. I am moving into a Hobonichi Cousin in this A5 format for 2026 for personal memory keeping and journaling while maintaining the third year of keeping an A6 Techo original as a daily toddler journal in which I document all the most joyful everyday moments with my 3-year-old son. If you've watched some of my previous videos, then you'll know that I'm on a quest to make the most of some of these templates in the back of the Hobonichi planners that I confess in the past I've often scratched my head around, not knowing how to make the most of them, feeling overwhelmed with the options, and more often than not actually ending up doing anything with these pages. And if you're a Hobonichi user, then you would know that these books are getting more and more expensive year on year. And I thought this was an opportune time to get creative and really commit to some ways of using these spreads, savoring the beautiful Tomoe River paper. And even if they're not something that ends up being very useful or functional for the remainder of the year, that at least I've had a bit of time to play in these pages as I cultivate excitement and optimism for the coming year in these lovely books. In my previous videos, I have shared ways that I intend to use the graph paper as well as the My 100. Today, I'm sitting down and sharing with you how I intend to use the timetable spread as a way for me to map out some morning and evening rituals. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to brainstorm the types of morning and evening rituals that have worked well for me in the various seasons of my life in the past, as well as some constructive, valuable habits that I would like to cultivate in the coming months. This timetable template is quite flexible. There are two different timetables, which is what gave me the idea to do an AM and PM ritual. There's also an extra blank column on the left-hand side, which I'm thinking may be useful as a place to anchor in a particular intention or theme of that specific activity. And it's also blocked out with 7 columns for the days of the week. Now, it's been many years since I've been a student. And so the idea of needing a timetable to track my classes, for example, are so far beyond the needs of my life. Although I'm a university professor, outside of my weekly scheduled classes, I don't really have a strict weekly routine with, let's say, weekly meetings or weekly appointments. That's really going to be valuable for a timetable like this. Not to mention that my teaching semesters are only 12 weeks long, and I teach for 2 semesters out of the year, which means there are many months in the year where I'm not teaching, and also my teaching schedule would change. I also have a thing where the vast majority of my books, although they are technically planners, I use them primarily as journals and memory keepers. So my planning, the actual setting of appointments, time blocking, drawing out my tasks, all of that happens for me digitally because I really need the flexibility of being able to reschedule and delete appointments and activities on the fly. And when it comes to these beautiful books and the precious time that I get to carve out of a busy work and family schedule to sit down and play with my fountain pens and my washi tapes, this is not really the time that I want to be spending planning out my work. And so I have a thing where I try not to make my work or my career a central part of what I do in these books. For me, the value of this stationary hobby is the enormous mental health benefits that I reap. I love that journaling is a place to help me process my thoughts and emotions, to anchor back to my values, my life purpose, my life strategy. And it's also a place for me to get really mindful, to ground myself in the present moment and enjoy the sensorial delight of feeling the feedback of nib on paper, of watching the beautiful colors glide across the pages when I'm drawing out or hand lettering decorative elements. And of course, the satisfaction in plonking down a luxurious sticker. One way that I have decided to use this space with a little bit of creative flexibility is I'm thinking to block out the columns, ignoring the days of the week, and splitting up the columns into 3 different segments. And that will give me a little bit more width to fill out my activities. So, what I mean is, I'm thinking I will leave aside the blank first column and Monday. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll treat as one column. And that's where I'm going to write down a ritual for when I'm low energy. Thursday and Friday will be the ritual for when I have higher energy levels. And then finally, Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to set aside for a very special kind of day that I like to have at least once a quarter, if not once a month. And that's something special that I call a Radish day. That way, I will be able to essentially use this space to have 3 different morning rituals and 3 different evening rituals that I carry out when I first wake up in the morning, all the way up until lunch, and then also from when I finish dinner, all the way up to when I get ready to go to bed. These 3 different rituals will allow me to flip to this page and at a glance, sense how I feel in my body and have a place where I'm guided to complete rituals that I know would be nourishing for me and help me restore my physical and mental health. So now that I have a little brainstormed guide for what my rituals will be, I'm going to convert these messy notes into this space here. And then I'll talk you through what my rituals are and also explain what this mysterious radish day is for me. In my last video, I drew out a bucket list in the My 100 list of my toddler journal with my Asvine C80 inked up with Robert Oster's toffee from a little ink sample that Alison of Little Coco Studio kindly sent me a few months ago. And I was so happy with not only how beautifully this pen flowed, but also how legible the writing turned out, which is very useful when I'm making these reference spreads. So I'm going to use this pen and ink combination again for today's journaling session. I've got my Moomin blotter paper from the latest 2026 Hobonichi release, and I'm good to go. That was funny that I said this as fine C80 pen flows really well. And then I immediately proceed to have one of the worst hard starts I've ever experienced. And the first hard start I've ever experienced with this pen since inking it up. So that took a little while for things to get going. But I thought that was such a nourishing exercise in documenting what I know to be really mindful, restorative rituals that I can do in the morning and the evening. even the exercise over the weekend of brainstorming the things that I currently do or that I've done in the past that I know will work for me, as well as the things that I might like to do more of in the future. Even that activity was one that really helped me think intentionally about the sorts of activities that I know have been invaluable in previous seasons of my life, and yet they flitter around in my mind. And when I am having busy, stressful, and challenging periods in my life, including times when my anxiety, hypervigilance, or low mood are triggered, it's very difficult to then have the executive functioning capabilities to say, oh, well, I'm just going through a rough patch. So I know that what has helped in the past is to make some art, maybe set a timer for an hour and do some journaling, or choose some peaceful and enjoyable media, like maybe a stand up routine from my favorite comedian or reading a really good book. Those sorts of activities somehow can feel really difficult to access when I'm trapped in moments of spiraling, rumination, and worry. So I've done this now and I think, gosh, that took me no time at all. Why haven't I done this sooner? I'm not sure I've ever written down my ideal rituals. So what I did was I wrote down what my rituals could be for my low energy days, my higher energy days, and my radish days. On days where I've woken up, either maybe I'm really stressed or I had a rough night's sleep, and I just know that it is going to be a bit of a slog, and I just don't have the motivation or the time to do something more involved. That at the minimum, when I roll out of bed, I'm going to wash my face, somehow splashing cold water on my face, even if I struggled with insomnia for half the night, that really helps in making me feel refreshed and clean. It always makes me feel better to drink a big glass of water first thing in the morning. Now, I'm not somebody who struggles a lot with hydration. In fact, I think I'm chronically thirsty. And I've joked with my husband that if the two of us ever get stranded in the desert, just kill me right away because I'm going to drink all the water and nobody else is going to survive. So I'm usually somebody who keeps hydrated very well. So I have never needed to track the glasses of water that I force myself to drink every day. And yet in the morning, I often think, oh, okay, better get up, better make coffee, better check my son's awake, better do this, better do that. And I forget just the very fundamental pleasure to drink a big, clean glass of water first thing in the morning and to chase away the overnight dehydration. I take my vitamins every morning, which to be fair isn't really something that I, strictly need to write down. It has become second nature to do this now, but it nevertheless is something that reminds me of how I'm tending to my body and caring for my physical sustenance. And so it's a tiny little micro habit that, nevertheless, when times are rough, reminds me that I'm still putting one foot in front of the other. I've gone through periods of my life where my mental health is bad enough that you never take things like washing your face, drinking water, or taking vitamins for granted. On my low energy days, I might move straight to set one priority for the day and just one. What is the one thing that I must do or would love to do? And that is the one thing that I'm going to negotiate with myself and say, if I just complete that one thing, I'm going to consider it a win. And again, on really, really challenging days, that could be as small and simple as have a shower or reach out to a friend or call my psychologist and make an appointment. And then once I've set my priority, I can set my Pomodoro timer. Pomodoro is a technique that has on and off worked for me. There have been periods of my life where I can credit in my CV 4 or 5 journal articles that only got written because of my Pomodoro timer. Right now, I'm in a period of my life where I really, really love using them. That's not to say that every single day in 2026, I'm going to use a Pomodoro timer. It's not to say that in June, if all of a sudden I think, you know what, I'm sick and tired of using Pomodoros, I'm just going to work on my own or set a different type of timer or just put on some deep focus music and get my task done for the day, that somehow this would mean that I'm failing my ritual. But right now, for me, Pomodoro is a beautiful shorthand for doing deep work. And that's the intent. Now, in my mind, my idea is I will do maybe minimum 2 Pomodoros. So that for me would be 2 25-minute work stints with a 5-minute break after each. And honestly, if I can do 1 hour of work, deep, focused work on something that I've deliberately set as my priority, I'm happy. I don't need to do 7 hours of busy work, which might involve 5 hours of choosing the best font for my next PowerPoint slide or answering emails or having a gossip session with my colleague. I would rather do 1 hour of focused, intentional work on a purposeful task than to bum around all day. On my higher energy days, there are some similarities. I'll roll out of bed, wash my face, drink water, take vitamins, but I might be able to squeeze in, say, a 5-10 minute morning yoga routine. My favorite yoga channel on YouTube is Yoga with Adriene. And at this stage, she's just got this incredible decades long backlog of videos. And I honestly go back and do some of her routines from 7 or 8 years ago. Then I can set my 2 or 3 priorities for the day. Maybe I'll squeeze in a half-hour journaling session. I especially love the mornings to catch up in my A6 toddler journal because it might only take me 15 minutes to write down some of the cute conversations we had or some memory that I want to capture for the previous evening. And then I'll launch into my Pomodoro sessions. And on high energy days, it might be for the rest of the morning and all of the afternoon. I'm using my Pomodoro timers to do 2 to 6 hours of deep focus work. In the evenings, after I have dinner and I've cleared the dirty dishes into our dishwasher, I would like to make a cup of herbal tea. In 2026, I would like to spend more time decompressing, reconnecting with my husband. And so this might be something that I invite him to do with me more often, where we'll sit down together back at the cleared up dining table, and I'll make a big pot of herbal tea for us to share while chatting about our highlights of each day. On my low energy days, though, what's really important for me to keep in mind is to very deliberately choose peaceful media. For me, this could mean reading a gentle, cozy book. It could mean watching stationary videos. It could also mean watching a really light comedy television series. What it doesn't mean, which I'm clearer about, is I don't watch really sensationalist news. I don't watch controversial videos where I see rage baiting or really vicious ad hominem attacks in the comment sections. And I also don't read mystery thriller crime novels that then keep me up all night or haunt me with nightmares. So on low energy days, I've been trying to bear in mind the importance of choosing peaceful media in whatever form that might take. It's also really important to me, even when I'm low energy, and this is a hard one when I'm low energy, is to message a friend. It might even mean sending my mum a message and telling her that she's in my thoughts or that I really love her, or even sending her a cute photo of my son from that week that I haven't had a chance to share with her yet. After that, I will call it a night. I'll brush and floss my teeth in the evenings. I'll wash my face, and maybe I'll put on a 5-minute meditation before I go to sleep. When I have higher energy, after making or sharing herbal tea with my partner, I will spend a little bit of time journaling or making art. So, yes, it could mean updating my daily journals, but where the inspiration takes me, maybe I'd prefer to do a sticker decorating session or doing some collage. I will then also choose some enjoyable media. So for me, I'm broadening the scope. It doesn't have to be peaceful and calm, but it could be something that gives me a little bit of excitement, injects me with a little bit more energy, but I know isn't going to derail my mental health either. Beyond just sending out one message to a friend and loved one, this could be where I block out 15, 30 minutes to respond to any open messages, and as well as review my next day's schedule. Just to have a quick look at my digital calendar, look at my to do list, and just make sure that I orient myself mentally to what needs to be done in the coming day or week, and also to take stock of whether my plate is reasonable, realistic, or whether I might need to postpone or cancel a few of my commitments to make sure that I'm not marching headlong, uncritically, unquestioningly into burnout. Then also, like my low energy days, I'll end the night by brushing, flossing my teeth, washing my face, and on those higher energy days, maybe doing a 10-minute, 15-minute bedtime yoga routine, finishing off with a meditation. What I found really helpful was then having left the first two columns blank and having that extra space anyway, I decided to write down the theme or intention. Now, this was very much improvised as I went. And so, because of that, I realized that the different activities that I list out on the high and low energy days didn't correspond perfectly with a theme. So, for example, on my high energy days and my radish days, I've got here morning yoga. So, I decided to use this row as an intention of movement. But I didn't think to leave that row blank and move the setting priorities and the Pomodoro further down to deep work where thematically it belongs. Now, I'm not going to beat myself up for not having designed this spread perfectly because for me, what this really highlighted is how I can still nevertheless use these themes as anchor or prompt for something to do. So on low energy days, it's going to be very unlikely, knowing myself, to be able to summon the energy and the motivation to do a full blown yoga routine. But knowing that in a nourishing ritual, I ideally have movement somewhere between taking my vitamins and diving into my work for the day, then for me, it could be something as simple as a 2-minute stretch before I sit down at my work desk to write down my one priority. So that brings me then to my radish days. The name Radish Day is actually a little bit of a relationship deep cut with my partner. So, shortly after we were married, we had little nicknames for each other in which he would call me Bun and I would call him Cat. One day, we were browsing a little boutique in Sydney, and at the front of the counter, we found a little deck of self care cards. And there was a rabbit themed deck. And my partner pulled it out and said, "Oh my God, this is like you." And then we took a look at some of the sample cards out for display. I could be misremembering this so dramatically, but the card that I pulled out said something along the lines of, "May your days be as delightful as radishes." And it had a sweet illustration of a rabbit gardening or pulling out a radish from their garden, something like that. And my husband and I thought it was just the cutest thing we had ever seen. And I really do wish I had bought a deck of those cards, but I think I couldn't justify the expense, put the cards back, but it never left us this sweet memory of an idea that our days could be as delightful as radishes. So many years after that, I decided that when my mental health was going through a particularly difficult period, and maybe this was around 7 or 8 years ago, when I first started being bullied at work, I decided that I needed to do something very intentional and planned in order to help me restore my mental and emotional health. So I decided that I would formally block out days of the week. First, it started once a quarter. And then when I could start letting go of my expectations for perfectionism and hyperproductivity, and also the situation at work got worse, I started making them monthly. And during really, really rough patches, sometimes they were as often as weekly. So it might typically be on a Friday or some other day of the week where I knew that my work commitments were going to be the lightest or the most manageable. I would block out my calendar, or sometimes I might even formally take a day off on annual leave, and I would call it a radish day, and I would plan out an entire day schedule full of all of the nourishing tasks that I knew would kick my health back into full gear. This is the sort of day where, let's say, I had a really delicious pack of cookies and I knew that there were two cookies left, but I couldn't bring myself to eat it and I was saving it for a special occasion. A radish day would be when I allow myself to eat it. It might be that at the last holiday or birthday, I received a luxurious pack of Bath and Body products from a friend. And I, again, couldn't bear to open up the packaging or and any of the things in your house that you have been reluctant to quote unquote waste. That's the day to do it. So light that beautiful candle that you had bought but was too scared to use. Open up your new fountain pen or ink it up with your favorite ink, or crack open that notebook you were saving for a very special project. The radish day is a day to intentionally fill up all of your cups. So for me, rather than splashing some water on my face, I'm going to wake up and I'm really going to deep cleanse my face. Whatever cleansers, exfoliators, moisturizing lotions, or serums that I have in my collection, I will use it on that day. I will drink water, but maybe if I knew that I had a scheduled radish day, the night before, I might make a big carafe of cucumber water or lemon water and stick it in my fridge, maybe pulling a couple of leaves of mint from my garden, popping it in the carafe, and then having this extra touch of luxury the following morning. I'll take my vitamins. I don't think there's any way that I can use that one up, but I might do a more elaborate morning yoga routine. Even on high energy days, maybe I squeeze in a 10-15 minute morning yoga. But if I knew that there was a really yummy 1 hour yoga routine ending with a 10-minute meditation, that's going to be the day that I schedule that for. So I should say there's no work on a radish day. After my morning yoga, maybe I'll take a shower, rinse down, depends how sweaty I got. And then I'm going to take a walk through my local neighborhood or even hop on a bus and go to one of my favorite cafes, some place where the owner or the wait staff know my name, they recognize me, and I know that I am going to be really well cared for, or I'm going to enjoy a really well made cup of coffee. When I get to that cafe, I might order myself breakfast or brunch. I'm going to bring all of my favorite pens, journals, stickers, and stamps, and I'm going to choose a cozy nook in the cafe and give myself a tender, nourishing journaling session. In the evening of my radish day, I will again make herbal tea. But maybe where on my low energy days, I grab my everyday tea bag of lemongrass and ginger and plonk it into a mug. But on my radish days, it might be pulling out that lovely loose leaf herbal tea. That's the day that I'm going to get out my favorite teapot and brew up a big, big pot of that special tea to share. And maybe I'll pull out those two last cookies that I was saving for the special occasion and couldn't bear to finish. Again, I'll journal and make art, but on a high energy day, maybe I set a timer for 30 minutes to do that. But on my radish days, I'm going to spend a full hour, an hour and a half, even coming down to this writing desk space, lighting a scented candle, and really turning it into an extremely loving ritual to savor. While on my other days, I might reach out to a loved one or respond to messages. On my radish days, there's something beautifully introspective and inward looking about those rituals. So rather than firing off a broadcast, I would like for that day's connection activity to be some form of expressing love. So maybe choosing a friend, perhaps even one that I haven't spoken to in a little while, and really sitting down and writing them a thoughtful message about all the things that I'm grateful for in our friendship. On my radish days, I really love to watch a film. Now that I have a 3-year-old, I rarely get the time to sit down and watch movies. TV series are a little bit easier to squeeze in because that might just be a 30-40 minute commitment in the evenings. But watching a film is a really big deal. I'm lucky because I have so many friends who give me wonderful recommendations. So I know that there's a good chance I'm going to love it. And I'm not taking any unnecessary risks with a 2-hour film that ends up being completely not worth my time. So I'll queue up a film that I'm really excited about and I'll savor it on my radish day, or should I say my radish evening. And look, if I don't have a film and maybe I want to spend more time journaling and making art, and I don't want to stay up till 2 a.m. watching the movie, I might then, read a good book. Perhaps I'm immersed in a great book, and I know that I would love nothing more than to spend an hour of my evening diving back in. I will spend a few minutes reviewing the next day's schedule. For me, that's always a useful task because when I don't have a firm idea of what I'm doing the next day, it can be a little bit harder for me to sleep because I have this open loop going, am I sure I don't have a morning meeting that I'm going to sleep in and completely miss? Or, was I supposed to do laundry, but I haven't sorted my laundry basket yet? There's just this like huge part of my cognitive bandwidth that's being taken up by, but what do I need to do again? What should I prepare? So, actually, reviewing my next day's schedule is a really good way to then close that loop and say, all right, I've worked out what I need to do. I've made a to do list. Now I can forget about tomorrow and just anchor back in the present. which is so important when after brushing, flossing my teeth, doing another deep cleanse of my face, that I really am able to ground in my mindfulness with a nourishing, in-depth bedtime yoga routine. Maybe enlisting my partner to come and give me a proper shoulder rub, and then having a meditation. Sometimes when I haven't done this little step, even for 5 minutes of reviewing my schedule, I'll be doing a stretch and going, oh, I got to remember that I need to call this person tomorrow. So it completely belies the point of having a mindfulness part of my evening ritual if I'm not taking care of the planning part. So that for me was a really useful activity to list all this out. And the real test will be in the coming year when I do go through tricky, difficult periods where I feel like there are some strains to my physical, mental, emotional health, whether or not I remember to flip back to this timetable and anchor back in and go, great, now let me use this as a ladder to pull myself back up from the pits of anxiety, stress, depression, or overwhelm, and see if I can, task by task, tending activity by activity, restore a little bit of my energy and my strength. I would love to know if any of you have morning or evening rituals or any other kind of rituals, perhaps with a different type of cycle or a different time of the day, that you know that when you do them, they help so much in restoring calm and peace back into your life and well-being. I am always so grateful to have the opportunity to learn from and be inspired by each and every one of you who take the time to watch my videos and leave a comment in my comment section. Thank you again for joining me in this half improvised session for filling out the timetable spread of my 2026 Hobonichi planner. I will link in my video description below to my 2 previous videos, my ideas for the graph paper and the My 100 spread of my A6 techo. As always, thank you so much for being here. In the next week, I plan to share with you a little bit more vulnerably about my struggles with perfectionism and specifically how it shows up in my journaling planning practices and my stationery hobby, and how I'm using my journaling and stationery hobby to find a pathway towards healing my perfectionism and some of the root assumptions, beliefs, and habits that I've cultivated over the last 40 years of my life in order to find greater self-compassion, acceptance, and peace. Until then, I hope you take really good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.